like this. One more. You don't have to last forever and turn blue and fall over. One more big, beautiful breath. Abund vashmeya nitkadash shmok te malkutak nehwet vyana kaikana dvashmeya up bearea. Hablan lachmadasun kanan yomana. Washbuklan chalbein tahain. Haikana dap chanan shbakan lachayavein. Wila tachlan lenesiune. Ila petsan min bisha. Metul didelaki malkutak wahel watishbukta le'alam almin. Just be open. I'm going to tone for you. I'm going to be aware of the rise and the fall of your breath. That's the word rucha in Aramaic, ruach in Hebrew, ruch in Arabic. Just be open. This might sound a little foreign to you, maybe not. Our one absolute eternal being through which we are born forth from the realm of the all and the only. I am empty. Within the ecstasy of your presence and the pure vibration of the name. Empower my creative expansion through your emergence from the unseen realms. As I realize our life and will as one on the manifest earth, Areia, as in the divine celestial heavenly realms. Provide the nourishment of clear insight and realization through me now and in each present moment. Release the echoes of my hidden past as I cancel all of my concerns with others. Do not let me lose my true self in forgetfulness, but wholly release me from the errors of my perceptions. For the undivided holiness is the absolute, the all, and the only. And our deep, intimate realization of the grace and gratitude of shining universal magnificence. From cosmic gathering to cosmic gathering, from age to age, aeon to aeon, la'elam almin, forever and ever, from moment to moment, from now to now. May these pure intentions be the rooted, fertile earth center from which all my actions flow. Let's tone one sound one time, and we're going to come back into silence after it. It's going to sound like this. Amen. Amen. Okay? Get a big, beautiful breath in. I feel people aren't necessarily afraid of silence because it's nothing, Shelia in Aramaic, but actually because it is everything. And in the silence is the true realization of everything, of that pure field of potentiality. And when everything's resonating all at once, we can't actually perceive, because in order to be able to perceive, we have to be separate from it. But if everything is resonating all at once, that includes us, which is what brings us to the silence. In other words, you're not loving people, you are love. You are silence. So before we really go deep into the toning, I just wanted to say that is what I would call more of an experiential interpretation of the prayer, of the Aramaic Lord's Prayer. And I generally don't use the word Lord, unless I'm referencing the fact that I don't use the word Lord, if that makes sense. Lord, really, there's several words, Adonai, of course, but the way we think of Lord today, actually, most people don't realize it. It started right here, actually, in this country. And it came from 8th to 9th century feudalism. And the Lord, in Old English to Middle English, the sound sounded like this, Hlufward. And what Hlufward meant was loafward, meaning the person that guards the bread. And the loafward was the guy that owned the land. And having that ownership of land, of course, at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, with the peons at the bottom, aptly named, and the serfs, having that ownership, they can become the ruler. They basically measure out the parameters of what society must live within. So When you throw that word Lord around like that in that sense that we say in English, that's a little bit unfortunate because that word didn't exist in Yeshua's time. So what I'd like to do is offer you one of the primary words in Aramaic when he was referenced as a Lord or he was speaking of different aspects of Lord. This is one of the primary words he was using, and you've all heard this sound before. I'm going to tone it once just by myself so you can hear it and feel it, okay? And it's not a very masculine word, actually. So the mar in Semitic language is a combination of a rooted bedrock of strength, but it also has a feeling of meaning of mar, which in Latin ultimately became water or ocean, an expanse of water. Rhea, Rhea, Ora, Re, Ra are all ancient Semitic sounds that meant an expanding light. In the case of Rhea, or aura, it was an expanding feminine light, which is the difference between looking directly at a light. Thank you for turning that off. Did you turn that off, or did I turn that off? I know I turned that one off, but it's nice to not have this in my face. But actually the reflection. The direct light was called Ra. The reflection was Rhea or Aura, etc. There's different ways of pronouncing. So what did that actual Lord mean? It was that expression of that feminine light from a bedrock of strength. And there was a flow aspect of the letter mem, literally the original letter, which is basically the M, looked like ripples of water. Funny how that works. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of an experiment with that sound, okay, and see how it feels. So I'm just going to do it one time, come back to silence, and see what's going on in the body, okay? This is, Yeshua called this Haikla. Haikla is translated as temple, which is funny. He never referred to this ever as a body unless he used the word pagra in Aramaic, which literally means corpse. It actually basically means a meat suit. So, funny. He always referred to this as the temple. And by the way, Haiklat's the same word for church. So, let's try that. Just one time. You don't have to sort of blow your voice out. See how it feels, okay? Get a big, beautiful breath of air. Again, be aware after the tone, what's going on in the body. Let's do that again. A little flash of insight. If you put the letter mem, again, like the letter M, at the end of this, you have Mariam or Miriam, which is actually the name Mary in Aramaic. Her name was actually Lord. Interesting there. So what we're going to do is we're going to do repetitions of this. Actually, let's try a little experiment first. This is always kind of fun to do. We felt Mary here. Well, that doesn't sound right, but we felt what Mary tones like and feels like in that sense. But let's try that feudal word. Let's try toning the word Lord one time and see how that feels, okay? Get a beautiful breath. Lord. How's that feel?
Not as good as the one before.
Not at all. So what we're going to do is wipe out that one by doing the other one more time. Okay? Ma here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep repeating this sound, Maria, for a period of time. Let's just say a few minutes. I don't want to define it exactly. And rather than all of us doing it exactly the same in terms of we all run out at the same time and then we all start again at the same time, or if you run out early, you wait for the next, for the next time around for everybody to start at the same time. Try to keep it as connected as we're able to. And I'll tell you this, it's interesting to experiment with this, because the first thing we do as humans, whether we're aware of it or not, is we try to commune together. So if I told you right now, start at a different time, or, like let's do the first one together, and then just pick a different time to come in. When you run out, start over. We're still going to end up kind of in line at first. And if I were to actually say, hit a totally random key or note that's totally dissonant with what the other people are doing, you're still going to go to something that's harmonically more feasible in the beginning. It's just what we do as humans. It's kind of an interesting phenomena in that sense. But what we're going to do is we're just going to keep repeating like this, essentially. When I run out, you can get a breath of air. You don't have to do that forever. And just keep going over and over, regardless of what everybody else is doing. You understand what I'm saying? When you run out of air, get your breath, start over, okay? So let's take a, first, before we do this, let's take a deep cleansing breath into the nose. Hold that in the temple just a few moments. Hold it. And then out through the mouth, full release. Okay? So here we go. I'll start the ball rolling. We can all do one together, and then just get at your own pace. And then what I want you to do is start experimenting with, maybe try it a little higher, a little lower, a little louder, a little softer. Change, do it in some kind of rhythmic manner. We're going to keep coming back to this kind of an idea. And essentially what this is that when you're really able to tune in to what your temple needs and or is seeking to express in the moment, when you get to the place where that happens fully authentically as you, the intriguing thing about that is we come back into a natural sense of harmony without conforming to everybody around us, if that makes sense. Does that make sense with what I'm saying? And we're going to do this a few times with several different words, maybe some phrases as well. So just, and matter of fact, throw a random tone out so we can even change the pitch here. See if anybody can do it that's not. See, that's where you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Anybody throw a pitch out, anything, just sing something. See what I'm saying? Yeah. Somebody throw something out. That's an octave higher of the same tone. Thank you. See how, you see how much of a challenge that is? It's interesting, but that's what we do. So there we go. Maria, or Maria, or I can't do that one. Oh, the dogs would start going. So, okay. Maria, you ready? Big, beautiful breath of air, just one together, and then go off on your own. Beautiful. Just keep it going. Keep going. Don't even have to make a Maria sound. Whatever's coming through, whatever sound it may be. Feel that? But you see how that happened? Even when you tried to go off on your own, we still came back into a harmony. Funny, because there's a word for that in Aramaic. It sounds like this, ha'imanuta. Ha'imanuta. Ha'imanuta, funny enough, is the word faith in Aramaic. Iman is essentially still the word faith in Arabic today. But faith, a lot of times people will ask me, like they'll hear, somebody will say something about what I've been doing for decades, and they're like, well, what is your faith? And I'm like, well, I think you need to explain what faith means to you, like what you're asking me before I can answer the question. And they're like, well, what's your religion? I'm like, religion has nothing to do with faith. They're like, well, yeah, like my faith is Christianity. I'm like, and I mean, you know, bless their hearts, I love them all dearly. If I was to choose, if I actually was going to make a conscious choice of a religion that I would happen to be sort of centric around, and that would be my life's work, I wouldn't have picked Christianity, because the most difficult part of it is navigating, I say this with all the love in my heart, navigating the ignorance about it, and the people not knowing what they don't know. And like, again, Jesus being this like California surfer dude with blonde hair. And I'm like, you know, he actually would have looked a lot more like a blend of Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein, if you want to get a little more accurate here. And people are like, no, we can't think of them like that. They're the enemy. And I'm like, okay. But that word faith is an interesting thing. There's hai, iman, uta. It's 4 different sounds. The ta sound genders the word feminine. What does that mean? Feminine is what we're doing with the toning. In being feminine, like essentially the bowl that I'm holding here in my hand would be considered masculine, okay? Something I can show you. Feminine would be considered to be my perception of it. I can't show you the feminine. The feminine is the experience. It could also be translated as the word attitude in English, ta. Intriguingly, the u before that in uta at the end is like ing in English. It means action. So if I say, as an example, sneh, that's the word hate in Aramaic. If I say sneta, that means someone has a hateful attitude, if you understand what I'm saying. If I say sneuta, they have a hateful attitude that they're acting out on. They're physically hurting somebody, as an example, or hurling obscenities, whatever it may be. So we've got the being part, we've got essentially action, we have aman. Aman is literally an Aramaic and Egyptian root sound that literally means, like ring around a rosy, it means to essentially press something into the earth, like a taproot. Something becomes a pivot and everything revolves around the root. Like ring around a rosy, I say. They'll say sealed in faith and trust. You could say, and it's the root of the word amen, amun, which of course is also Egyptian, amen. But one of the often ways it's translated is rooted center, something that roots in the center. And then the first sound of the word is hai, and this is faith, hai iman uta. The hai sound is literally the word life in Hebrew, l'chaim, to life. Yeshua said, I come to give you chaya and give it abundantly, life. What does it literally mean? If you want to be literal, it means conscious life energy, not just life in terms of you living longer, but you waking up. I come to wake you up. I come to give you all of the energy, the consciousness of life. So we have essentially consciousness, awareness, rooted center, action, and being. So in other words, if you have faith in something, then it's not faith. Like your belief in a religion is not a faith. That's belief. That's the word hymen in Aramaic. Hymen. Does that sound familiar? Hymen is an Aramaic word that means a delicate membrane. And that's what faith or trust is, hymen. Okay? Now, ha'imanuta is different. If you have faith that something's going to happen, it's not faith. It's belief. What is faith? Faith is what we just did when you are wide open. Let's say you're here as a musician, you're here as a writer, you're here to scoop ice cream. You went somewhere and got ice cream and there's a 92-year-old woman and she's not thinking about being somewhere else. She's not thinking about something else she should be doing. She's right here. She's wholly, fully present in the moment. And she's being fully and wholly authentic. When you're in that state of being, that's faith. Carlos Santana hitting a note on guitar and it's just laying there wiggling like, that's faith. Whenever you're doing whatever that may be and you are wholly, fully authentic, that's faith. There's no duality in it. You don't have faith in something. Again, that's belief. But the piece we're moving toward here is, there's a word in Aramaic in the Beatitudes. It sounds like this, warazo. It was translated as exceedingly glad, which is what? I guess is that the last of the 10 Beatitudes in Matthew? Exceedingly glad. But what that word warazo actually means, it was a word that the desert mothers and fathers and the Essenes would use. And what it meant was essentially to allow one's ego, which is just a Greek word. Ego means individualized self. It doesn't mean all this stuff that's been attached to it in our culture lately. It just means an individualized self, this part of us that feels separate. I know I had my laser pen in my hand and it would have been able to help me to put this across, but I don't know where I put it, but it's back there somewhere. But essentially to allow one's ego or individualized self to become so wholly, fully thin that, in the words of the Essenes, when your ego becomes so thin that you can reach your finger out and touch the tip of your toes. Your brain can't quite handle that thought, meaning that you're so thin that you meet yourself, that your ego is so thin that you, in the beliefs of the Essenes and the desert mothers and fathers, you're becoming a pulsing membrane for the cosmic vibration. And they did that with sound. So what we're going to do is we're going to experiment with another tone here. I've got the little Ra necklace here. I had a tree of life until I left it in Avebury because, well, it fell off. So I'm like, okay, I guess this is supposed to be an offering. Thanks for pointing that out. I really loved that necklace, Oliver. Now it's gone. Just kidding. But so Ra is an interesting sound in Egyptian. It's also a tone that was quite common in Aramaic. What we're going to do is do a little bit of an experiment with the sound Ra. Has anybody ever toned Ra before? Ra is the sound most often toned in the Egyptian culture. How do we know? It's all over the place. And it was represented by several things, including the Eye of Ra. And I'll say that essentially Ra is to Horus what Christos, which is a Greek word, is to Yeshua. Essentially a very similar meaning. And what we're going to do is just tone a sound Ra one time. I'll give you an idea of what that feels like. Let's try this. Ra. That's all. Let's do it one time, see how it feels. Doesn't have to last forever, not full on. Ra. Let's do it again, wide open. Everything you've got, let it run out whenever. Ra. feel that? Let go of all the religious ideas of what people think Ra means, represented by the sun, Sun Ra. Let's do that again, full on. One big, wide open Ra, okay? Ra! You feel anything in your body? There's no right and wrong in the question and answers here. I'm not necessarily looking for you to find the thing you're supposed to feel. There's nothing you're supposed to feel. This is literally about becoming, again, that resonant membrane for the cosmic vibration. You may notice your pulse increased. You may feel a buzzing, pins and needles, sort of tetany.
My crown chakra activated.
Well, but that's the one that's going to, intriguingly. So, interesting, because if I were to tone the sound ru in several Eastern cultures essentially means dark or shadow. Not necessarily darkness as a bad thing, but essentially a lack of light. We're not going to tone that sound right now, but that's an interesting one. So let's try Ra again one more time. I don't know if I'm going to hit the right pitch. I don't remember what it is at this point, but that's a good thing, okay? Big Ra. I'm sure you feel something.
There's a spiring. You can feel the spiring within the central canal.
And interesting, yeah, because there's a word in Aramaic that sounds like this, me'amid. It's the word baptized, me'amid. What baptize actually means is to reveal, literal meaning is to reveal the central pivot or central pillar. Like if you were to tear down a building and just leave the primary central pillar, that's what's left. It's funny, there's another word that also means that. It sounds like this, midbara. Midbara. Midbara is the word for desert. Jesus is led into the desert by the Holy Spirit. Well, I'm not going to start in all these translations. But holy, Kadash, Kudsha, which doesn't mean holy. Even the Greek holy doesn't mean better than secular. It actually means whole. All-embracing, all-encompassing. And what does the word spirit actually mean? Jesus never heard the word spirit in his life. It was not in that region. It barely existed even within Latin at the time, spiritus. He may have heard the Greek, the pneuma, or some would say pneuma, which is a bizarre way to pronounce that today, but some feel that's the way they may have pronounced it then. He definitely heard ruach or rucha. And I'll give you the translation of that word spirit. It sounds like this. This is a good way to translate spirit. Rucha means, literally means frequency or vibration. Not frequency in the sense of how many, but rather a vibration, an emanation. It also means, more commonly, it means the word breath. So if you want to understand what Jesus was saying in Aramaic, cross the word spirit out, write the word breath above it. It means ba-bum, 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 means heartbeat. It means magnetism. It means electromagnetism. It means electricity. It means gravity. It means wind. It's all the same word, rucha. But intriguingly, what do I feel on my arm? What's that? Everybody knows they're all trick questions. You can answer anyway. They're all setups. What do we call that that's on my arm? That's my breath, right? Well, interestingly, in ancient Aramaic, breath isn't the air that's moving through my body. It's not what I feel on my arm. It's not even actually the movement of the air as in the wind. It's not that physical thing moving through me, but rather my feminine perception of its movement. So breath isn't actually the air in my lungs. It's me taking a step back and being aware of the frequency, the vibration, the movement of that. It's not the wind on my skin. It's actually my awareness of that on me. So if you want to know what it means to be spiritual, there's the key. You walk into a room essentially empty, essentially curious, open. So let's tone that sound, that ruah. We're just going to do ruah. We don't have to do the letter het is kind of would be called a guttural. I'm originally from New Jersey. And in New Jersey, when you use words with lots of people usually punch you in the face. So I try not to start words with that. But we're just going to make a sound like this. I'm going to put this one a little high. You can go an octave lower. Okay. You can do it like that if you'd like. You ready? Big breath in. Feel that? Let's do that again, wide open, one more time. Let's try an experiment. Okay, let's do it again. Let's try toning the word spirit, okay? Let's see how that feels. One big time, same pitch. Spirit. It's okay, it's not as bad as Lord. But let's go back to Ruah. One more time, wide open, everything you've got. How many times do you think you could have to say the word spirit, just say it, before you felt what you're feeling now from toning it in Aramaic? Do you get the point there? That's a lot of times, and I don't think you'd get to it. And intriguingly, it wasn't removed from the Bible, toning. It's all throughout the Torah, for Lord's sake. And in the Hebrew with the Torah, they're still toning it today. And a lot of people don't even realize that the beginning of Bereshit, essentially Genesis, wasn't originally, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. It was not a storyline. It wasn't even words, intriguingly. It was just a string of characters like a mathematical algorithm. There were no end markings. There were no final markings on letters to connote the end of a word, the end of a sentence. There was no punctuation. There was no spaces. It was a string of characters like an algorithm that was toned. And the idea was to be aware of each of the tones individually while you're toning through the architecture of the Torah. They still do it today, but intriguingly, most people don't know, it was 1,000 years before the story got put onto the Torah of in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And I'll also say there's Stan Tenen, different people that do work even with computers and deep mathematicians that actually show that the beginning of that particular text is actually what's called mathematically fertile. It forms all these crazy star tetrahedron, which is the human heart, the double torus, all these different things. So it's been there in the culture for a long time, but especially in Christianity, it's been removed. Before Yeshua would heal, it would actually says right there in the King James Bible, he would often look up sigh, grunt, or groan and make a toning sound before he would do a healing. If you look at the Pistis Sophia in Greek, that literally says that he literally would point his face skyward and tone sounds in a healing process. But that wasn't allowed in the Bible, so you're not supposed to talk about it. So my little point in that is that what else do you know of? Meditation, prayer, and what other tool can you think of that you can do the first time and feel a shift in your awareness in less than 5 seconds? For a newbie that's never done anything like that before. I don't know of anything other than using the power of your voice. If you're a meditator for years, sure, you can get there. If you do deep prayer, sure. First time, probably not. So I'm going to start wrapping up the toning thing and just kind of, we're going to end it with like a big hoorah. And I just wanted to open it for questions. People have been already asking questions. I want to get something across here, though. Everybody, talks about, the idea, of course, that Yeshua did what to Mary Magdalene? What did he actually do to her? He cast out what?
Well, they say 7 demons.
7 demons. Yeah, well, they say 7 demons. Yes. So, intriguingly, what's a demon? What does demon mean?
Well, some people say it's a thought.
What's that?
Diamond. Like, so they say like angels are just angels.
Yeah.
Diamonds.
Yeah, the literal word, daimonia, is one of the words. And that's where the word diamond literally comes from. But funny, too, because angel, gosh, can you kind of rummage around, Oliver, just dig through all my stuff and see if you can find that? What the laser pen looks like? I had it right there. The word angel, malaka in Aramaic, angelos in the Greek, actually is the same as the word angle. Funny, because that's what we are. We are that light of eternity that's projected into this world, the manifest, and refracted into all these different directions. But intriguingly, the word demon in Aramaic, one of the primary words is shiadain. As an example, cast out 7 demons. That's Shabea, which is the word 7, Shiadain, which is the word translated as demons or devils, and then Apek. So here's a good example of actually what an angel is. How many lights am I holding? It's not a trick question. 1. They're all trick questions. And of course, we have this idea that there's almost 8 billion people on the earth. But really, how many lights are there? There's 1. Well, the angels are all those different refractions. The way it shoots out in all these directions. And here's the thing. The key in his teachings, and it's there in the Bible, it's just concealed by not just bad translations, but just misunderstandings. When you are being wholly, fully, authentically you, when you are being in your own faith and authenticity as this one dot, whichever one is you, that's when we ultimately, again, come into the realization that we're not one of the dots, we're actually the light of life itself, which is what achedaya means in John 3:16. It doesn't mean begotten in any sense of the word. Does anybody know when the word only begotten was translated, when it was defined? It was in the Bible from the late 1st century in the Gospel of Yochanan, John, which was originally called the Gospel of the Beloved Disciple, which was about a feminine disciple, not a masculine one. Shh. And then a guy named Irenaeus had that regendered. We know that for a fact, but intriguingly, they didn't define it till the 4th century at the Council of Nicaea. They voted on 4 possible definitions, and they picked one, which was only begotten. Bless everybody's heart. I don't know that most people know that, but in Aramaic, the word was echidaya. The ayah sound at the end is the same word at the end of heaven or sky, which is shemaya. It means something that has no boundary, meaning either it's everywhere or it's nowhere. The word, the letter, or the sound in the middle is chad, which is literally the Aramaic word for one. And then the yah in the beginning means who, or essentially an awareness of. So you actually have one who is single and completely limitless. So if you're limitless, what does that really mean? If you have no limit, if you're one with everything, are you getting what I'm saying here? People have problems. Like if I say, if the word God in Aramaic is Allah, which means absolute only being, absolute only being. That means that all your concepts of God are BS. Belief systems is what that means. I don't know what you're thinking. All of them. Nothing can come into the presence of the one other than the one. Nothing can come into the presence of the absolute except for the absolute. And that presence is all here, us moving beyond the belief systems. Well, funny enough, speaking of belief systems, I'm going to define the word demon for you in Aramaic, the word shadain. Shabea 7, shadain. Here it is. That's what shadain means in Aramaic. Shadain means force, but it doesn't mean a force that's flowing. It means a force that's restricted. Kind of like you're looking at a stream and a little eddy goes off to the side and it just starts swirling. What happens when that little eddy goes off to the side? All starts stagnating, all the bugs start showing up, all the little cooties are in there and everything. And then we look at all the bugs and we say the bugs caused it. But no, it was the stagnation was the actual demon. The things that showed up are the cleanup crew. Kind of like the way the Jordan and the Jordan River just kind of flows into the Dead Sea. And why is the Dead Sea dead? Because it can't flow out. It's not flowing. Another way to explain what a demon is this. Let's say I have two 1 square foot patches in a beautiful, nice green lawn. And they're about 30 feet apart. And over here I measure all the creepies, crawlies, bugs, buzzards, all that kind of stuff. This Dr. Michael Rice explains this perfectly. Do the reading here, do it 30 feet away over here. Of all the creepy crawlies and everything, they're going to be about the same. But let's say I take a demon, let's do it this way. I take the carcass of a dead rabbit and I drop it on that patch there. And I leave it at 98.6 degrees for about 24 hours. And then I come back. Do you think the creepy crawly count is going to be higher here or there? Are they going to read the same? No. The demons aren't all the bugs that showed up, the things that look like they're possessing us. That's not a demon in Aramaic. The demon is the force, the energy that's not voicing. So the word apek, translated as cast out, this is what that means in Aramaic. This is what it means to cast out a demon. And funny enough, in the Gospel of Mary, Gospel according to Mary Magdalene, they name the demons. Name it Magdalene herself, calls them darkness, desire, ignorance, the exhilaration of death, the foolish words of the realm, the foolish visions of the flesh, and hostility and wrath, which is the quality of each of the chakras when they're not open and voicing. They take on the exact opposite quality. Also, 7, intriguingly in Aramaic, is a word that means complete, meaning totally, completely taken over, meaning that she was essentially almost completely shut down, and he opened her back up for business, so to speak. That doesn't sound right either, but maybe it's just the feminine energy, I don't know. My beautiful wife. But so that's something that people, when you start getting a grasp on that, understanding that, again, it's not the act of having faith in some kind of an idea. It's not even having faith in what something is supposed to sound like or feel like when you tone it, but realizing that when your heart is open, when your intention is pure, and when you're coming from your own authentic nature and expressing from that, that is faith, and that's how you actually get to the real, I almost want to say, the root of what toning is. It's not about toning to hit a sound or toning to feel a particular way, but allowing yourself to express openly. And that's the real key. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of, I'll like do a little question and thing, but I wanted to do a little bit of a, sort of like, I call it like the human organ, which, yeah, organ as in playing organ. Is my mind in the gutter tonight or something? Is it just being around you for the last 3 days, or just everything is going back to this? But yeah, what we're going to do is start by just being aware of your breath, being aware of the rise and fall of your breath. Funny that when you first bring awareness to your body breathing, it starts kind of changing a little. The real key is being able to observe it. We're not going to spend too much time on that, but being able to observe the rise and fall of your breath and just be a witness of it. And there's so many things I could say about that, but we're not really here for that particularly. But Just be aware of the rise and the fall. And see if you can summon up a tone, some kind of sound. And what we're going to do is go sort of like we did earlier. Was it Maria that we did that with? And we're going to allow whatever needs to express, okay? What exactly does that mean? It could be grunts, it could be groans. Let me put it this way in the words of Father Thomas Berry, who just passed a few years ago. He said that the earth was once molten lava, and now she is singing opera. Almost like a grid coming alive. So what we're going to do is essentially activate that part of ourselves right now. This is the real buzz. Again, being aware that we're building this up and we're going to build it and we're going to build it. And there's going to be a point where we're going to be just as much as you're able to, wide open. You don't have to blow your voice out. Really letting this express and shine through. And then I'm going to count backward. I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, stop. And you're going to stop on the stop. 3, 2, 1, stop. Kind of like being on a train at 125 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden it stops. What's going to happen to you? You're going to keep going. So I want you to be aware of that when we're doing this, okay? So just whatever tone, this might feel a little weird at first. Again, you'll notice people are sort of mimicking each other regardless of what your intentions are. That's what we do. It's awesome and it's great. As an example, with what's happening in the Ukraine, I have to say it's beautiful the way, that's not, but it's beautiful the way that humanity finally is getting to a place where they're like, this is not acceptable. This just is not acceptable, as opposed to 50 years ago when it was just considered one of the ways of life. Intriguing how that works, and that's what we're starting to move toward. So I'll just start with a real simple tone. Make whatever tone you feel. Hear all this sighing? Again, that's what Yeshua did during a healing. What was he really doing? He was releasing whatever it was that needed to be released. And he was being aware of what was already there in the system, that life is always present. So when he heals and he says essentially, your faith has made you whole, what he actually said in Aramaic, ha'imanutak ahayatak, which is not your faith has made you whole, but essentially your faith, you coming from the authenticity of who you truly are, has made you chazi, behold, realize that you were never sick in the first place. You were believing a lie. People say, how did he cast out demons? I'm like, because he didn't believe in them. Am I saying there's not a force of evil? No. Am I saying there's not a force of malevolence? No. But 100% of its power comes from our fear. 100%. People say, then you've never been in the presence of malevolence. I'm like, I've been in the presence of malevolence. And the key was when I realized that even if I couldn't breathe and I'm laying there in my bed with some kind of electromagnetic blanket of etheric ants holding me down and I feel like I can't breathe, I have no voice, it's being pulled into some kind of a void in the presence of that kind of evil. If I actually, even in my mind, imagine that I'm breathing, then I'm breathing or toning. So let's try that. I've done this with people on ventilators, people on their deathbed. Our 11-year-old, our third child, I brought her in with toning. My mother, in her final hours, being covered in tumors from cancer, I literally got up in the bed in the nursing home with her, basically the hospice, and held her in my arms. And I basically toned her out. The last sound she made was that sound, the letter mem in Aramaic. Intriguingly, it means water, which is how she brought me into the world. But it's also the root of the word ma. Ma. Ma is the sound most often uttered by a child in reference to what they consider to be the maternal figure in their life, whether it's in their language or not. They tend to look at the mother and go, ma. There's even monkeys and birds that go, ma. That's pretty powerful stuff. So, but that everybody felt the buzzness, the realization of that depth. To me, that's really the magic of what the toning is. So I'd like to actually, I feel like I was going in a place with that. I got so deep. Did I say I was going to do some?
Try toning in your head.
Oh, that was it. Sorry. Yeah. I went so. That's the problem with having the American surfer Jesus, the California surfer Jesus here, as your brain goes blank. It's like, dude. But, and they're really like that in California. I love it. But so let's try toning a sound just one time, just as one of the words for light, human light, nura, and just one time like this, nura. Let's try that once, okay? Woo. One more time, wide open. Now we're going to do it without making a sound. Just do it in your mind's eye. Imagine you're toning. You still feel it, don't you? You don't actually have to make the sound. I've toned with people who are deaf that can't comprehend what a pitch is. I've shown people how to tone with their, as an example, parents who are on a ventilator who can't tone in that sense. Just bring it to your awareness. It's amazing how that works. And just to cap off like this final piece, you know, that whole idea of evil is interesting because when you realize that, again, let's go back to the demon idea, that they're not there to actually hurt you, they're feeding on what's dead in you. They're feeding on your fear. What is fear? False evidence appearing real. The Course in Miracles says, love is the opposite of fear, or love is the only thing that is real. Love is the opposite of fear. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. when you realize that they're there because of the fear and you learn how to breathe, you learn how to tone within yourself. And I learned this as a kid the hard way, having all these bizarre visitations, which you've all had whether you remember them or not. And you start realizing that the more fear you have of that presence, the bigger your salad buffet gets. Once you get that part figured out and you learn how to breathe and allow it to resonate, they actually show up, and that force of fear that you used to attract in, or that force of evil that you attract in with your fear, becomes a way for you to remove your spirit barnacles. And they'll actually show up for a little while and feed on all that stuff that you need to let go of. And then eventually you can literally be in the presence of absolute malevolence and have not even the slightest flicker or glimmer of any kind of fear. And that's really the transcendence of death. It's pretty powerful. And I got to that by being aware of my breath and toning. So, time, can we get a time? Anybody got a?
8:30.
Okay, I just want to be, oh, that's a good time then. Anybody have any more questions about toning? Like when we close, we're going to do something.
But I just need to dip out.
Okay.
You said fireworks off in my head with a load of things.
Yeah.
In a magical sense.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and I'll add just one thing to that before you. What's funny about it is it's not what I said that's overwhelming. It's the resonance of the cage that you already have. Like when I started, as an example, studying Aramaic, I was so freaking confused. And it's not about Aramaic per se, but ancient philosophies in general. And then I started realizing, hold on a second here. The reason I'm not actually having the experience I thought I was going to have was actually because, you know, like when a Christian comes after me, that's, bless their heart, I love them dearly with all of my heart and being. But when they come after me attacking, it took a while for me to learn, wow, they're not actually attacking me, they're attacking themselves. But it's what, you know, we're human. So the first time you hear this and have the experience of it, it's pretty commonly, what the hell was that after? But yeah.
Words of power.
And you feel the shift. And the key, yeah. It fries the brain in a beautiful way. And that's the thing. I remember a woman come up to me once. She was like, I don't have a clue what you just said for the last half hour, but I can feel a shift. I'm like, well, that's the key. And the people who come up to me, they go, oh my God, it was great to hear it. I already knew everything you said. It's nice to hear it again. They probably didn't get anything, so that's awesome. Thank you for being present. Yeah, anybody have any question or anything, even just about Aramaic in general, Jesus' teachings, misperceptions, observations? Bad jokes.
So when you said about breath on the arm, when you did that, what I realised as well is that you're talking about all the four elements coming together.
Absolutely.
Because if you, I don't know if you all want to do it, but if you kind of breathe really hot air onto your arm, so you've got the air, you've got the fire from the breath, but you condense it, so you end up with water, right? Solidifying on the skin, so earth, I suppose, is the physical manifestation of the breath. So that's all that kind of thing going on.
So I'm going to steal that and take credit for it. That's beautiful. I honestly never even, yeah. I'll have to figure out a royalty for that, but wow. It's fun. I mean, he was talking to Nicodemus in Yochanan 3 and John 3, and he essentially says, you know, the wind comes and goes, you don't know where it's going, but you hear its voice. And that, in Aramaic, right there in the text, it says rucha. And then he says, as it is with rucha. But unfortunately, it was just translated as spirit, which is this, like, funny enough, spirit in Latin actually means breath, inspiration. But we've got this modern idea that it's this, like, whatever. But when you say to somebody, it means breath. It means frequency, it means vibration, it means gravity, magnetism, electromagnetism, all these forces that you don't see, but you obviously can feel. How does one become spiritual? Pay attention. Walk into the room, not trying to figure things out, but I call it the cosmic question mark, to go in curious. Be aware of the smells, be aware of the sounds. If you're really quiet, and in a quiet space, or you put some headphones or some earplugs in, you can hear your circulation. You can even, higher than that, hear your nervous system. And for me, I just thought it was too many heavy metal concerts. But I realized, wow, and people started telling me about that, and I started reading about it, and I was like, wow, that's pretty powerful. But it's just, it's pretty amazing to me that, you know, they say this stuff was going to kind of, not just the Jesus teachings, so to speak, but that these would essentially be revealed intriguingly at the end of time. And that phrase in Aramaic, Lashulame de Alma, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world, unto the end of the age, which can have an astrological connection. I am with you unto the end of time. What Lashulame de Alma actually says in Aramaic is, I am with you unto the end of the ceasing of your conception of time or space or world. So when you let go of the world, you realize that the I within the I has been there the whole time. And that's what's happening. 50 years ago, people weren't, if I was doing what I was doing 50 years ago, I would have been dead. They would have, oops, sorry, backed over me 12 times accidentally. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Well, you didn't feel that ka-clunk, ka-clunk, ka-clunk in 10 different directions. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to run over you, California Surfer Jesus, but it's just amazing. It's time. And when you're in a place like this, obviously the volume's higher and things are more open. And it's funny because you can take two people, bring them into Glastonbury, and some will have that amazing, oh my God experience, and others are going to feel like there's lobsters crawling through their skin. Because what? They're not breathing, they're not open, they're looking outside for the cause of what they're feeling. Funny how that works, but I mean, this is the time this was supposed to happen. And what I actually call it is not necessarily the second coming of Christ, which is happening on the level of the heart. I actually call this the second coming of the Magdalene fire. And the reason I call it that is not only are we talking about, again, not something happening in front of us in a masculine sense that we see coming, but something that we can feel. And if you stay focused on the present moment, like I basically say, be aware of the rise and fall of your breath, keep your eyes on the horizon. When you least expect it, she puts her arms around you and she brings you into the eye of the needle, so to speak, or through the gate that Yeshua spoke of. And that's what's happening right now. It's happening on a feminine level. And the reason I say Magdalene particularly, because she was shoved off onto the side. It was 99.9999999% Jesus, which comes from the Greek Jesus, which means hail Zeus, Jesus, hail Zeus. How many people know that? And not only Magdalene, but everybody besides Jesus was in the 0.0000001% that wasn't Jesus in the Christian story. And right now, all that's coming back into balance. And you start realizing, oh, wait a second. A Jewish male in the first century that's not married, nobody would have listened to him. Nobody, not a single, if you understand the culture, not a single person would have listened to him. It basically pretty much would have rendered him mute. He would have been absolutely unaccepted. But when Magdalene comes back into the picture and you realize it doesn't work at 51:49, it only works at 50-50. And it's not man and woman in innies versus outies, but rather masculine and feminine. And what more beautiful self-balancing system could there be than after thousands of years of this masculine misogyny, the focus of words on the page, the focus of buying and selling these ideas, you start realizing, oh, all this realization is starting to open up to the consciousness of us coming into that awareness that masculine and feminine is not about innies and outies of the physical body. It's about how we essentially act in the world, and it doesn't have anything to do with the physical body. And it's funny, people will say it's androgynous, you know, like you'll change, like say God to goddess. That's awesome, a place like this. And we need to do that for a while, just kind of say goddess, goddess, goddess. But in truth, it's neither. Because the absolute, you know, in the words of the Tao Te Ching, it says the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. So in other words, you can't really know God. People say, oh, you be God. Well, you can't be God either. When you're being authentic, when you are being wholly, fully you, quirks and all, that's when you're most like God. Not when you're trying to be something. Because then, funny enough, the trying, that word, there's a word for that in Aramaic. It's called Satana, which means a being divided against itself. The good you fighting the bad you. And then Satana becomes this changing cast of characters of the person, the neighbor that throws the dog stuff over the fence because they went in their yard, or the person that cuts you off, or whatever it may be. Satan becomes this cast of characters. And then when you start realizing, wait a second, all that's actually, in the words of Gandhi, there's no devils in the world but those in our own hearts. It changes everything, but it also sort of like you either got to kind of step up or step out, so to speak. And I just want to acknowledge everybody, not just for being here, but just in the world for stepping up right now. It's powerful. Yeah. Anybody got any questions or anything? Or?
Just to acknowledge you, that was really powerful and beautiful and potent, and not just your knowledge and wisdom, but as you say, that it obviously resonates something, even if there isn't full understanding. But my question, thank you, it was really amazing. But my question is, what is going to happen? Like you said, that buzz that it creates is almost like a sort of instant spirit, like a quick shortcut in the toolbox of spiritual connection. And is it that, the resonance it creates, a vibration somehow is because we are just that? Is there something that's, is that what brings you into the moment? Because
it's one of many things that brings me into the moment, but for me...
Is that why, is that why it's...
Well, here's the thing. if you look at it just biologically, we're using our breath. We're meditating, which only means to focus upon something. Means it's basically meditation is to focus upon. And we're actually using sounds that literally were acknowledged in ancient times. And it's not just in ancient times. It's related to Welsh. It's related to Lakota in Aramaic. Lakota in like Tashunka Witko or Tatanka Yohata. It's another one of my passion languages over in the States. Funny enough, their alphabet, although the syllabus is in a different order than in the Aramaic, they have the same letters, same sounds that they came to.
Is it Native American?
Yes, yeah. And we live about an hour from the Cherokee reservation. She's Cherokee, the Eastern Cherokee, which is really, unfortunately now, in many ways, really about casinos in the U.S. But it's the only way they can seem to make money that the government will allow. But these are sounds that have been considered sacred for so long. Kind of like, you look at the Chalice Well, you look at like whatever the cave in southern France that Mary Magdalene supposedly lived within. It's not just that it's a sacred place, but the visitations and all these people holding that sacred, even without going there, looking at it. Like today as an example, my first time at the Chalice Well after looking at it for so long online and reading bazillions of books. And there was a point where, Oliver's like, well, we're going to go in and we're going to immediately turn left. So I'm just listening, and I go in and I immediately turn left. And instantly, my eyes are on the horizon, I'm in the present moment, but the whole time my brain is saying, the secret's behind you. The secret is behind you. And I'm like, no. And my beautiful wife walks over, sits on the bench, and I walk over here. And the whole time my brain's going, the secret is behind you. And I'm like, no, the secret's right in front of me, and it's right here now. And I'm just aware of that, kind of like in the toning, just making the sounds. It's almost like just toning itself, doing it mindfully makes it sacred. And it starts to make you more aware of your breath, etc. So when you just focus on that toning right here, right now, regardless of the world wanting to pull you in all these other things. Like as an example, if I get stuck in traffic, a lot of times, and she knows it, or before I get up to speak, in my mind I'm toning silently. And then all of a sudden the time turns to turn in the present moment to what was behind me, and then there's the well. And I'm like, oh my God, there it is. And he was like, there it is. And but I didn't get to it by just instantly not listening to Oliver. I got there by being present in the moment. Not trying to find what I was looking for, but just expressing the authenticity of who I am. And in that, even just the simple Just the awareness of the rise and fall of your breath, and walk into the room and easier to get a camel through the eye of a needle than a rich man into heaven. It's actually not a camel, gamla in Aramaic. It's actually gamala. It was a mistranslation. And what a gamala is not a camel. And it was not a door in Jerusalem that the camel had to kneel down. That was actually made up about 150 years ago. It actually means a braided rope. You're not going to get a camel through the eye of a needle unless you're a really grotesque person. And you're going to have to inject it with something. I don't know, squash it down in a food processor and squirt it through the eye of the needle. It's not going to happen. You can get a braided rope through the eye of a needle. But in order to do that, you have to be very mindful of the present moment and unweave that and put it through one strand at a time. And amazingly, being aware of the breath, being aware of just simple toning, even without making the sound, is threading that rope through the eye of the needle. And funny, I think I might have mentioned that in the beginning, the word for eye in eye of the needle is kruria, which literally means to free a slave in Aramaic. And that word for rich man into heaven doesn't mean rich as in wealthy. What it means is attached. What does that mean? That means attached to anything, something else other than what is happening right now. But exactly like Eckhart Tolle says, when you just come into now and you're aware of that space, sufficient unto the day or the evils thereof in the Christian teachings, that word yalmata doesn't mean day, it actually means now. Sufficient unto this present moment are the evils. What's the word evil mean? Funny enough, in Aramaic, the word's bisha, and it means unripe or overripe. It means like a stone green banana or a black, oily, rotten banana, meaning it's not fertile in the moment. And what's evil, really? It's this. It's not bad. This is what keeps you out of the moment, is the beliefs, the ideas, the religion we try to live up to, all of the frames that we're trying to stay within the bounds of, when the truth of the matter is that it's been in your heart the whole time. There's not an outside device or belief you need, but the guidance system, the GPS that's within you. The guru is within you, essentially. And that's what we're finally waking up to. And toning is a piece of that for me, just being aware of my breath. Just paying attention. All right, question time's over. So I was kidding. I had to find somebody to do it.
In the moment, I'm so in the moment. What's the Aramaic word for heart?
Liba. Liba. So if I say your heart, it would be libak. But liba. In the sixth beatitude, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Tubvehun. Why is my blevon nectunes I don't know, my head went out of there, but in that case it's blebon, which is another way of saying not really just pure in heart, but one who is wholly, fully in the heart. And I'll say this, heart in Aramaic isn't just this. What it actually means is the place where feeling first happens prior to thought. So it's what you really feel outside of what you're thinking. Because you've never had an accurate thought in your life, you do not become what you think about. All that your thoughts do is frame the movie that's on the screen that's not real in the first place. None of this is real. What's real is what's watching. Yogananda, as an example, said, he talked about transferring our sense of identity from the pseudo-soul or ego, which in Aramaic is the word ape, which was translated as hypocrite, which actually means persona, which means mask. Hypocrite meant mask. So transfer our sense of identity from our persona, ego, mask, back to the inherent nature of our divinity and to become the ever-joyous witness of a stupendous cosmic drama. Well, our thoughts, they're not bad, they're just delusions of a mind that's not there in the first place, because there's nothing that's separate from the absolute. But in order for the absolute to experience itself, regardless gender, it has to birth itself out. So in order to birth itself out, there has to be an illusion of some kind of manifestation, of something we would call evil, shadow, mirrors, reflection. And what the heart really is coming back to the place of what you really feel. Again, your prayers aren't really your words. It's not the thoughts you're having. It's what's happening in your closet. It's happening in the tawana, and that closet is the heart. It's what you're really feeling, really, at that pure sensation of frequency. And that's the creative power. But because it's feminine, people don't think about how that power is. They think that thoughts are creative. But thought is, according to the ancient teachings, the crystallization of the heart, or the crystallization of feeling. Feeling is the sensation of pure frequency. The sensation of your awareness of that tone, that's heart. That's feeling. That's our creative power. What we think about it is, again, BS. It's belief systems. There's nothing real about what we think about it. The part that we think is actually not. So, yeah. Does that explain that? So yeah, liba is the word for heart in Aramaic.
I have a question as well. So, I just want to know, in your opinion, how much of the Bible has been changed in terms of like the body of the work has been changed from the Aramaic. Obviously, it went from Aramaic to Latin to Greek, and obviously
Aramaic to Greek to Latin. Yeah.
And now it's the English and King James version. I just want to know how much has been, like, in terms of Gospels have been changed, and how much has been lost in translation. And I think, because for me, I've read the Bible, well, I'm reading the Bible at the moment, and I still find it quite beautiful.
Even in the King James,
and
absolutely.
Especially the Corinthians, that's
Mm-hmm.
that stood out for me. And there's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of, like, almost like hidden gems in there if you have the eyes to see. I just wanted to know, if, like, in your opinion, do you feel like you have to
go to the original language
to actually get the true teachings, or is it available in the King James as well?
I think if you've got, I saw it as a 7-year-old, it was the summer of 1979, and we had this thing called Vacation Bible School in the States, and I was going to a Methodist church, and I laid down 5 of my grandmother's Bibles. She was a pillar in our Evangelical United Methodist Church, and I was comparing the Gospel of Matthew in these 5 Bibles. And I was really confused because everybody's telling me it's the inerrant Word of God, and I'm like, this is really different. Even for me being a kid, this is very different, looking at the same verses in these. And I mean, that's kind of a long story, but there's more in that. But it kind of drove me to keep looking deeper, and I just kept reading the Bible over and over again. And it was the King James, which is very different from the original 1611 King James. And the New King James is very different from the King James, which is very different from the 1611 King James. And it's funny, the reason I can't fully answer, well, number one, I don't know fully how much, nobody was behind Yeshua with the dictaphone. Nobody was writing it down. Even the church says it was 20 to 25 years before the first things were even written down. And the funny thing about that is if there's an auto accident and a police officer shows up and an insurance adjuster, 10 minutes later they talk to 10 witnesses that just saw it 10 minutes ago, and they get 10 totally different stories. So imagine a book after all that, or children pass the secret, and the beautiful woman with the red dress walked across the street, turns into the green elephant, fell backward off a cliff and blew up. And that's like, 1 minute. Of course, kids are really prone to that with their creativity. I don't know that the reason I say I can't fully answer it is, can you look at the King James and see it? I think you'll definitely see, if you have eyes that see, you're going to see a lot. Will you see all of it? I don't think it's possible to really see all of it. if you're manifest, if you're in a physical body, there's always more. And I just learned over the years that I had eyes that saw at the age of 7. By the time I was 14, I was riffing on the words of Jesus, intriguingly, or by 14, where I'd write a couple of lines down from Jesus and just write pages about it, not for somebody to read, just because I had to. But going back to those ancient languages, it was kind of like I knew a lot at the age of 7. And then all of a sudden, when I went back to the ancient languages, I realized I had a blanket over my speakers, is the best way I can put it. And it doesn't mean I had to go back, but it sure did amp the process up. And literally at the age of about a couple of weeks after the time where I had my hand over the page, I actually had an experience at Vacation Bible School where I literally saw layers within. It was where they were talking in the Gospel of Matthew, lay up for yourself treasures in heaven where moth and rust did not destroy. And everybody in the class is talking about heaven as this place you go to after you die. And I'm just going, I don't understand, because where does it say you have to die for the heaven thing? And the teacher, who was one of the children in my class's mother, was getting really frustrated. And there was a point where I looked down at the Bible, and I didn't talk about this for a long time. I finally put it in my book that came out like 7 years ago, Echoes of an Ancient Dream, but I didn't talk about it because I didn't want people to think either I was special or that I was a weird. Well, I don't mind the weirdo reference. Actually, I'm complimented by it. I just don't want them to tune out the message because of something that happened. And I saw 4 layers of different languages, etc., and there was a light emanating. And intriguingly, when I realized that was happening, all of a sudden I look up in the room, the classroom was dark. And I look around the classroom, and I noticed the teacher is in the doorway, and she's looking at me, and I hear all the kids out in the hallway at the church, and she's looking at me like, I know my face had to be red, like I did something wrong. And she's like, are you coming? And I'm like, okay. And I remember standing up, walking out of the church toward the back. There was like a baseball area. And all of a sudden, I'm looking up at the trees, and there were these lights dancing in the trees, like connected, like neuronal pathways, but there were no lights. And it's like there was this high sheen or shine, I would now call presence, as if somebody took a blanket off. Like I got the best sound I thought I could get with my sound system, and then some guy that they call a healer just came in and went, oh, by the way, you got a blanket on your speakers. And the blanket came off, and all of a sudden there was, there's this idea of raise your frequency, which is total bollocks. It's not that F sharp is better than F. It's not that G is better than F sharp. That masculine idea of somehow graduating is not real. It's not about raising the vibration. It's about increasing our bandwidth, which is our awareness of the whole. And if there's anything that I felt the ancient teachings really did, and seeing them in that, is it showed me more of the whole simultaneously to realize that the love in them was a moment where I'm resonating in a wider bandwidth than the previous moment, and I'm feeling more of the whole, more of the one. And I was able to touch that in little ways with just the King James or Greek Bibles, etc. But in the Aramaic, it literally, the things, like most of the things you probably had a hunches in your life about, it couldn't mean that. It's probably more like this. I'd say probably most of the time that's really what it was. But in a lot of cases, Christianity is kind of looking in this direction. And the whole time, again, like I was talking about earlier, it's actually behind them. Robert Frost said, we all dance around in a ring and suppose, while the secret sits in the middle and knows. And that's really what the mystery teachings are. They're not necessarily just withheld from view, but they're actually right in front of our face. But again, you have to develop the eyes that see and the ears that hear. So, people don't really have to go back to the ancient teachings in that sense, but it sure is more efficient. It's kind of like, listening to my favorite piece of music ever is Stravinsky's Firebird Suite on like an old worn out cassette that's like sticking to the tape heads versus being in the room with it live. The Aramaic for me brought it awake, and it's funny because the more experts that I met within the established church, the more I realized, bless their hearts, I love them all dearly. You notice that's before I kind of poke at somebody. I say that. I realized that they were just really good at parroting back what they were programmed with. And the better they parrot back what they were conditioned with or indoctrinated with, the more they were called an expert. And those are the people that they rely on. And the funny thing is when you start actually investigating what really happened, it's very different. Like me as a kid, I read a book in high school called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee about the true genocide of Native Americans, of our indigenous peoples. And I started biting back at my history professor in a lot of ways. Like, you know, this stuff that's in our books that you're teaching me is actually not true. I'm like, this stuff is not true. You know, funny enough, I'm like, the stuff that's in the history books, this right here, this reference you just made, like this about George Washington, you know, I cannot tell a lie, I cut down the cherry tree. That was written by a biographer 100 years after Washington died, and it was made up. And now people think that he actually said it. This thing over here about Crazy Horse, that's made up by a newspaper reporter who, and he didn't like that. But it seems to be like the theme of my life. I just had to follow my heart again, be authentic, and move forward. And so it's a long answer to a short question, but I think you know what I'm saying in that sense. So.
Do you practice magic at all?
Not directly. It's the best way I can put it. Does it happen? Yeah.
Aware of it, though,
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Because obviously what you're building up there really is like it's an energetic.
Yeah, magic with a CK, I often say. Yeah, like once you, and that's really the spirituality is once you start, your volume comes up and you become more aware of all of the bandwidths and all of the frequencies. The more you become aware of that, all that comes along with it. And that's what it really meant to add first the kingdom. The kingdom is actually Malkuta Dashmaya or Malkuta da Allah, kingdom of heaven, kingdom of God. The Malkuta genders the word feminine, which means it's a state of being. It's not a location. And once you get the state of being, everything else comes with it. But everybody's looking in the world for the kingdom. And they're waiting for the end of time on the level of the physical, when the end of time is actually now. It's amazing. You know, sufficient unto the day or the evils thereof? No. Sufficient unto yaumata, sufficient unto this present moment are the evils. What's evil? Your thoughts. What does evil really mean? Unripe, overripe, a rotten banana. It's not fertile now. And when all that starts calibrating, yeah, it comes with it. Say, do I believe in it? It's beyond belief. It's beyond, and I can't even say I know it, I am it. I don't know what other word to use, and so are you. Absolutely. And it's great to have, you know, funny, we were at was it the Rainbow Cafe? You know, where were we today? But this little girl comes up and she's like, "Are you a real wizard?" And I'm like, it was funny. I felt like John Travolta in Urban Cowboy. He's like, "But that depends on what you think a real cowboy is." But I didn't say that. He's like, "No, I asked if you're a wizard, not a cowboy." And it was such a magical moment because her heart was so pure and she had that like plaintive look. And I'm like, that's what it means to cast out demons. That's what it means to be healed, is to realize you were never that false persona in the first place. It's funny, hypocrite turned into like talking out of two sides of your mouths, all these other things in Aramaic, but it really meant adopting, you know, forgetting that you're the character in a movie, but you're not the movie and you're not the character, you're what's watching. You are, again, that witness of a stupendous cosmic drama. So all the magic, once you understand, it's kind of like, it's funny, you know, go down to somebody in the jungles of South America and have an overhead projector and have this apple sitting on a table. just up there, and you tell them, I want you to move that red thing, that apple, move it from that side to that side. If it's projecting on a wall, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the wall if they've never seen electronics. And then I go into the projection booth and I go, and I move it from that side to that side. And they go, oh my God, Holy One, you heal all. It's like, no, I just knew how the system worked. I wasn't looking over there. I realized it was back there. So all this pursuit we have for spiritual enlightenment, I'm sorry, it's all bullshit. It's actually behind us, and it's in the humility. It's not in the puffing up. It's not in the beefing out. It's not in the idea. And it feels on the physical level like a climb, and it feels like, magic. But I mean, it's real magic. Yeah.
Is there a Aramaic chant which we could potentially take home?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because it's been knocking on me for the last few minutes, so you must have had that question for a couple of minutes or something. It's a word, this is the phrase for I am the light of the world. And it sounds like this, Enana Nuhra, there's a Nuhra de Alma. Enana Nuhra de Alma. Now, Alma means time, space, world, manifestation. Nuhra is an interesting word, light, because the light of the sun in the ancient cultures was called Ra. The light of the moon was called Nuhra. Nuhra. So what's unique about moonlight versus sunlight? It's a reflection of sunlight, and the godlight the sunlight represented the godlight. So in Egypt, God was called Ra, in some cases, and the sun in Aramaic is called Nuhra. And funny enough, the light of the moon was called Nuhra, and the light of the moon, Nuhra, is the same word as human light or human awareness. Ninhar nor kun kedem b'nei nasha. Let your light shine before men. First of all, nasha doesn't mean men, it means humans. Most of the time when you hear the word men, it doesn't mean men, it just means human. But so Nuhra is that reflective light, and the Anana is an interesting one when he said, I am the way and the truth and the life. I am the, Anana Lachma Dahai, I am the bread of life. Jesus didn't, Ana is the word I. If he said Ana Nuhra de Alma, he would say, I, Jesus, am the light of the world. But he didn't. In Aramaic, he said Ana, which is literally I, the I within the I. So the phrase Anana Nuhra de Alma is that I that sees through you, as you, is the light of the world. Because the world's not what's real. What's real is what's witnessing. So Anana and... Yeah, absolutely. Generally when it's translated, it just comes out as I am, which in the Greek is ego eimi. But what's interesting about the Koine Greek is it doesn't really mean I within the I, which is in Rastafarianism. If you're a Bob Marley fan, oh, pirates, yes, they rob I, took I to the merchant ship moments after they threw I to the bottomless pit. That's because the Rasta philosophies and everything with Emperor Selassie came from Aramaic through Amharic and Ge'ez, which are the primary languages of Ethiopia and Somalia. So it's funny that Rastafarianism preserved the I within the I better than Christianity did, which totally dropped the ball. And they put it all in Jesus. So
earlier I wanted to say to you, there's a track, like a music track, and it's kind of like a dance track, and it's got a lot of bass to it, stuff like that. But what's interesting about it is like the lyrical overlays on it. So it starts off with like an interview with a Rastafarian, and it's like some posh English dude saying like, what's the crack with the word bummerclot, And he says, well, bummerclot is like, it can deal with anything, And we've got all kinds of class. We've got bummer class, we've got rust class, we've got blood class, we've got a class for everything. And he says to me, when I had some spiritual demons basically that I couldn't throw off, the only thing that would work was when I said bummer class. And then everything went right. All of that spiritual demon, it just went away. But when you break that word down and the toning of it, and you're just talking about, you know, Rastafarianism and all the rest of it, where it comes from and the meaning behind it, if you actually just think about what we just did, you break that down into toning, it's quite interesting, isn't it? What we were just doing as an exercise, you know, with the and the ah and the clarks, do you know what I mean? It's quite powerful, isn't it? When you think about it, it's like a power word. So,
It's powerful too to think that all human DNA traces back to Ethiopia and Somalia, essentially. All human DNA. And what's intriguing about that is that it's also the most politically ignored location on the planet, and financially in a lot of ways. And us Americans feel so important to look at the, you know, you save the children and send a little money over for the kids with the swelling bellies. It's kind of like when Hitler's DNA was analyzed and they found out that he was 70% Jewish. It's kind of a cosmic belly laugh in a way, but another way, it's kind of like these, you know, living in America after the Trump age. It was interesting because all of a sudden racism became okay and homophobia became okay and all these things that we thought we graduated beyond. And it's just an interesting thing that really, you know, there is no other. There's no other. It's amazing how you start breaking the sounds down like that. It's kind of gets you back to that realization. So, and then again, Enana Nuhra de Alma. And actually, it's something that I say, you can put it into your own tone, put it into your own music. Like, Enana is an interesting one because even though in Aramaic on the page it says Ana, we pronounce it as Inanna, which just by chance is the ancient Sumerian goddess of love, fertility, and warfare who had a sister who went down into the underworld, and she came out. Some people think it says the sister died, but it doesn't. They merged. It wasn't even a sister. It was her and a mirror self, but the mirror self merged with her. So she went into the underworld. Where's the underworld? Ta-da! We're in it. This is the underworld. This is the fall of man. There's a phrase from Arthur Young where he says that there was in fact a fall of man for the same process by which light first precipitates or condenses into matter, losing a degree of freedom or everywhereness in exchange for permanence or now-here-ness. And that's what we did. So we're in the now-here-ness, and it's by becoming wholly, fully authentic, not as our idea of what we should be, but as we are, quirks and all, that we realize, oh, okay, again, where did I put it? There really only is one light, regardless of how many manifestations appear to be all around me. And yeah, that's the second coming. This is the real.
Just as well, for when you chant light, the word angle and angel are similar.
Yeah, it's the same root, angle, and angel. We are literally that light of eternity, you know, projected into. It's funny, even the word. We could go forever. So I mean, but the word manifest. Everybody talks about manifest as an example. Most people don't even know what it means. Manus festus. Manus means hand, which is where human comes from. Hue means quality or timbre. Like if I go, wah, that's a timbre. Wah, that's a timbre. You know, like even as the quality changes, if you have different shades of blue, they're different hues. So human actually comes from the hue of the one with the hand, which actually would include primates, you know, the hand, using a hand. And manifest is manus festus, literally means as obvious as my hand. Colloquially in Latin, manifest meant obvious. You don't get what you want, you don't get what you pray for in the way that you think you pray with your words and your thoughts. You don't get what you desire, what you long for, what you want, what you say you're attracting. Let's think about that. So people come up to me a lot, they're like, oh, I'm attracting a new car, can you help me? I'm like, no. Like, why? Well, what's obvious to you? That I'm attracting a car. Well, if you tell me you're attracting a car, what is obvious to you? Oh, I don't have a car. So you're saying the law of attraction doesn't work? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you use the word attract, you're acknowledging your lack. And what I'm saying is the attraction is an illusion. The truth is you already don't have it here, which is why you don't have it here. And regardless of the words that we use, we don't get what we want or desire. We get only what's obvious. And what's obvious is what's happening on the level of the heart, meaning how do you really feel? And that's what's been happening lately. In the Gospel of Thomas, it says, there's nothing hidden which will not become known. That which you bring forth from within will save you. That which you do not bring forth from within will destroy you. What happened in the last 10, 20 years is the box got dumped out. And everybody's, look at this shit all over the floor. It's like, well, it's your shit. You know, why complain about it? It's yours. But in a way, it's not yours at all. Funny, it's kind of like the idea of the rich man in the heaven. What that word really means is attached. You ever notice if you go into someone who has a poverty consciousness, what their house looks like? Bless their hearts, it's floor to ceiling, it's stacked. You go into someone who has a wealth consciousness. Sorry, people, I don't mean to make it personal for any of you. You go in someone where there's a wealth consciousness, it's sparse. It's because they put all their shit in a box outside where you can't see it. But anyway, all that stuff's coming up now, and we're not any of it. And I want to leave, with this, a message that I was told, because I work a lot with frequency and with the toning and with this device called the Paradigm that's really amazing. At some point, I'll try to bring it over here. It would probably cost me $1,000 just to ship it here and hope that it didn't bust on the way. But without going too far out, my legion, my guides, told me very literally a few years ago, Dale, this is their exact words, including the curse. Not the curse, but the cuss. I'm from the South. The cuss word is in there. Sorry, I had to do that. But they said, we've been trying to give these messages to humanity for thousands of years, and you constantly turned it into fucking religions. You wrote it down on paper, and you bought it and you sold it to each other. So now we're giving it to you in a level of pure frequency. Without a reflection, you can't see the mirror image of it. Giving it to you in a level of pure frequency so you can no longer misinterpret the message. You can turn it up, you can turn it down, or you can turn it off. But the message is going to remain intact. And what's funny is when something happens on the level of frequency, it's amazing because I have like certain chimes that I use. It's like in the 90s, in the New Age, we had these angelic tones of light that we were manifesting. And then we were like, bring it on, full on. We want the awakening. So I have other chimes that like become really piercing in your ears. All of a sudden, the volume turned up and everybody started complaining that the world's falling apart. It was like, you dope, you asked for this. You asked for the volume to come up. You asked for greater awareness, faster vibration, all this other stuff. You got it. But now all the crap that you have inside of yourself that is not absolute, that is not authentically you, it's going to have to rise to the surface. And the healing isn't a matter of going in and changing conditions. It's removing let me put it this way, there's nothing that can come into the presence of the one or the absolute other than the absolute. And as an example, in the ancient teachings, the sun represented the light of God. So, and I told you, moonlight is human light in Aramaic. Sunlight is godlike. So what happens when you move closer to the light of the sun? You what? You get close to the sun, what's going to happen? You're going to burn. So here's a question that's hard for New Agers to answer. What happens when you move closer to the light of God? You what? Nobody's answering. Because, well, we want to say we become seasoned by the cosmic blah, blah, and all these other things. No, you fucking burn. Why do you burn? Because there's still something inside of you that believes it's not that light. And what were we told to stay away from? Fire. Then why did Jesus say, those that are near to me are near to the fire, those that are far from me are far from the kingdom? People think that it's peace I have come to bring to the earth. But no, I come to cast fire and sword and war, to turn 3 against 2 and 2 against 1, so that in a single house all will remain solitary and elect. Where's the house? Here. Who's the 2 against 1? It's all of my crap in my head. It's all of my demons. Remember, what does Satana mean? A being divided against itself. A house divided against itself. A kingdom divided against itself. Anything that is not in balance, where it's the good fighting the bad. There is no good fighting bad. There's only the absolute. There's nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so, in the words of Shakespeare, if he wrote it. Sorry, but...
My name is Ralph. I live in Glastonbury since 3 months here. So I'm going up from bottom to the well, the tour, and,
awesome.
And I do it with the crystals as well. And I've seen, I still can't really get through the whole understanding of it. But yesterday we went to the beach, went into the water, washed myself completely, sat down, and I found God in one line, just light. What I did today, I went up to the tour and I had a black stone. And what I did, I actually used it as a binocular. And I went so far into the darkness that it basically shook me, that I was scared if I would have stayed, that I would die on that spot on the tour. And I could not yet deal with its experience. Mm-hmm. So the other thing is going into the light. I'm sort of scared to get into it because it's that bad. So it...
What is the darkness but the absence of light? And it's funny that when you do ultimately begin to learn how to go into your own shadow and you go into the darkness, you get to a place, if you don't stop and you keep going and you face your own death and the loss of everybody and everything that you love, you get to a place where the darkness becomes so pure and so ultra concentrated that it's clear and begins to emit light. But you have to go all the way to its core to get there. Okay. And once you get there, you can't believe in this anymore. It doesn't mean that you're not going to play the game. Just like watching a television, you know, I can watch on a big 85-inch screen. I can watch on a little cell phone, but there's going to be moments when I forget I'm watching a movie on my phone, and all of a sudden the frame drops, and I'm just inside of it. And then I go, whoa, hold on a second. Oh, it's only, you know, the plane here I'm watching, of course, what else? The Big Lebowski on the way from the U.S. to here. I'm an official Dudist priest in the Church of Latter-day Dude. Yes, it's true. You met a Dudist priest. And that is actually true. But it was funny, like as many times as I've seen the film, there was times when the screen's this big in front of me on the seat, and I was just in there. And then it's like, whoa, hold on a second. But this world is far more alluring than that. And your heart, which is so incredibly beautiful and pure, is what's going to lead you. In other words, that what you did in that, most people would never hold that to their eye and try to see through it, ever. They wouldn't even have it in their hand. Because it's pure evil. Evil to the core. That was Dolly Parton from 9 to 5. If you've never seen the movie, she was calling Dabney Coleman. She's like, you are evil, evil to the core. But yeah, it's funny. It's not the darkness actually that scares us. It's the light. It's why we do dinner parties at night, because then you don't have to dust in the corners. You don't have to kind of scrub in there. You know, you don't have to scrub into the. This has nothing to do with your home, by the way. It's beautiful and it's clean. But yeah, it's a funny thing. It's, you know, I keep saying I'm going to close. All right, I'll close with this. When I was in my late teens, I started studying A Course in Miracles up in New York City with Marianne Williamson. It was right around the time her first book, A Return to Love, came out. And it's funny, like in that book, she essentially says, it's not our darkness that we're afraid of, it's the light. You know, who am I to be so talented, fabulous, gorgeous? And it's funny, like over the next couple of years, we watched that somehow on the internet get attributed to Nelson Mandela from his speech when he became president of South Africa after all of the apartheid and being locked up for so long. But it's really the true. it's really not the darkness we're afraid of, it's the light, because you can hide in darkness and you can kind of go down under the table and squeeze into the corner. But in the light, you can't really hide. And the funny thing about that is she, the Holy Spirit, the all-embracing breath of God, that feminine breath, you can't hide from her either, because she's your breath and she's within you. And the goddess is not outside. The goddess is within, which is why the goddess couldn't be held down. And I'm not saying that because of where I am here, but I think we owe ourselves a huge hand, because we literally chose to be here at this exact moment in human history, to be those that navigate the cosmic shift, as I call it, and to realize that we are the grounding rods for humanity. And a lot of people aren't doing that. They came here, but they're lost in being a famous goddess or a famous god or a big guru and all these other things, which is fine. And then you find out that in their personal life, they won't even listen to their child or their spouse because they're in heal the world mode. I was in that mode for a little while. Leave me alone, I'm meditating. I was never that bad, I hope. But it's the point of it. It's awesome that the yogis are up in the Himalayas meditating on their navel for the peace of humanity. And I mean that. It's amazing and it's beautiful. But I really want to see them around the dinner table with all of their genetic bloodline and their brothers that gave them noogies and wedgies when they were little kids, and whatever else was going on. I want to see them with them, and then we'll see how enlightened they are. This is the real work. This is the work. And I think I'm pretty damn proud of all of us. So sorry that it went over a little long, but remember, Enana Nuhra de Alma. And I'm not trying to sell you on something, but this, if anybody's interested, we made the room essentially, you can give a donation or not. I already paid for the room. I brought some of these with me. This is literally everything I've ever done, every CD I've ever put out. I've got a total of 29 CDs, if that makes sense. A DVD, a film that I made about 10 years ago, exactly 10 years ago. My book that came out a while back, and lots more on these little drives, which if you don't have these, they're on the table. This is like a description that's everything on it. It's everything in a nutshell that I've ever done here. And then there's also an HD course that's like 2.5 hours filmed in 4K actually, that's toning in Aramaic, breaking down the sounds, what they mean. And I just want to let anybody know, if you wanted to get this, that I'd get your email and send you the course, the online course, for free on top of it, because I couldn't fit it in this. These are listed as £77, but whatever you can pay. If that's an issue for you, then whatever you can trade, It helps us be able to offset the cost of coming over here, because I didn't realize that Oliver was going to make me spend so much money on stuff for him. To buy him clothes, buy him candy, buy him coffee. All the tickets to everywhere we've been going, I've been having to buy him. Actually, none of that is true. He bought me new underwear today. I'm kidding. No. But it's just saying this will help. It helps offset the cost. But this, to me, is a university that doesn't exist. And the thing that's different is I had a lot of mentors that were linguistic scholars, some that were theological scholars, some that were, like Oliver was saying early, like so spiritual that it was almost like frou-frou-y. And I did at least what I was here to do, which is kind of find a place somewhere in the center of that was very practical and real. And then I also offer a one-on-one mentoring, which is actually I first met you because you bought one of my drives. And then he spammed me like 10 times a day for years.
Yeah, I bought that drive 2 years ago, and there's so much on there, I haven't even been able to get through all of it yet. I mean, it's the biggest resource.
Dawdling, huh?
If anyone's curious, I highly recommend that.
And then the mentoring program is just what I do is I do weekly Zoom calls with people literally all over the world. Every continent except Antarctica, and that's true. I have not gotten to the penguins yet, but I will. Give me time. So if anybody's interested in that, you can I'll give you my phone. We could, you know, do a card or cash, whatever. It does help to keep me out there talking to people in a way that I don't have to like charge $1 bazillion, that people can just walk in the door. So, yeah. And it helps me feed my beautiful wife when food is scarce. And I mean, she's feeding too. So, I'm kidding. But yeah, thank you all for being here.
I've got another one here. Another one here.
Oh, awesome. Did you have a question or?
Just to quickly ask, sorry, you get everything on this?
On both sides, yeah.
All of it. But yeah, the drive, because like when I do events in the US, I have a stack of CDs and DVDs and stuff like this. And that's what's on the front side. But the jump drive is everything that's on the DVDs and all that, plus what's on the back. So yeah, but then I'm also going to get everybody's, whoever, you know, sign up on my email list regardless, you know. It's back there, but we'll like, you know, make sure that each of you that are here that got that, that will throw that in there as well. And it's easy to access from anywhere in the world, from a phone, from a TV, whatever, computer, the online course. And it goes a lot deeper than I could today. In like just the meanings of the letters alone is mind-blowing when you look at the meanings. I can translate words, or I can translate by letters and still get really close in Aramaic to the meaning of something without basically understanding what the words are if I didn't know what they were. So anyway. Absolutely. So I leave you with this real quick. Der Chubun, Chad Lechad Aikana, Diana, Echab, Tukun. Love one another. Technically, love one and one as I have loved you. Thank you. Thank you for being here.